Hesitating Lights is the sophomore full-length album from Uppsala, Sweden-based death metal band Floating. And there's a couple of important qualifiers to throw in there. The first one is probably post-punk or gothic rock influence, but also there's an interest in 90s death metal from the more progressive or exaggerative sense. That'll be a little bit more obvious on their first record, The Waves Have Teeth, which I actually released on CD and cassette. Those are still available. You could probably get them off Discogs for like $5 from me, or a little bit more on the Big Cartel for the site here. But ultimately, this is a band that I really believed in from the start. I was a great fan of their distortion of old school death metal ideas, a little bit of progressive death metal movement, some dissonance, and obstructive avant-garde ideas, musing alongside distraught post-punk vibes. And I compared their sound a little bit to Tribulation, but also Grey Dawn era October Tide. If we're going to put this in terms of Swedish metal, there's a heavy mood and a certain guitar affect to a lot of their work. And I think that is what they've chosen to emphasize on this second record. There's a specificity to it, which is both emotional and gutting in the way that it gets it all out. But there's also a classic, surreal sort of horror, gothic horror to a lot of what they're doing too. So that horrified feeling is a big draw there for my taste. And we'll see if you get it here on a clip. And then I'll talk a little bit about why I'm such a fan of the band otherwise, and how I think they've done well to expand upon the sound of the first record. So it's important to make the distinction up front that most people use the word post-punk for the sake of being more gentle in not using the word gothic in description of metal. It's definitely like a remnant of the 90s attitudes towards anything gothic, and it makes sense. In this case, I would say it's very clear that Floating is influenced by post-punk, yes, but also gothic rock in the way that they use certain guitar tones and jangle through them throughout. I would also say there's a bit of shoegaze on this record, even in the way that they develop some of these guitar parts otherwise that are more clean and have some different effects applied otherwise. But this is a death metal album, and the way that they flip the switch between different modes and fuse them together really is the uncanny, strange element that makes this album so both effective in its emotional freakouts, but also in its turn on a dime death metal related sound. So here on this record, they haven't pulled back into something more pretty and sweet. They pulled into something that is definitely a lot more complex, and it is rushed through in terms of developing its riffs and modes and movement. The songs they've chosen for singles are maybe a little bit more approachable. They're earlier on in the album, but as we reach the second half, everything congests, and in a really satisfyingly kind of horrified way, it pulls apart like thrashing rhythms, even more distressed vocal performances, to the point where there's less of a gothic rock feeling to a lot of this. So the overall take here is that this album is a little bit less abrasive in its production and presentation. It's a little bit more compelling in its artistic direction, but also they've they've smoothed the edges just a little bit to make sure that it's easier to get into. It is not an accessible record, but it is a unique event that I think a lot of people searching for something different and fairly original will find here. The way that I describe this band and this record at this point is that they found their way around the dark metal equation, where you can bring in those gothic and emotional influences without resorting to romanticist doom or traditional dark metal in the sense that it was just gothic rock with a metal production value. Maybe they weren't workshopping it that directly, but their end result is something that really speaks to their own sound, and something that is quickly becoming something that it's worth noting. And I was already in from the first record, and this second one does well to follow that up with some serious nature. So huge fan of this band. For me, this is a high recommendation. I think they'll do a little bit more with this in the future that will change a bit more over time, and this is still kind of the formative iteration of their idea. Overall, I think they found something that is their own voice and was from the beginning, and this extension of it is no less serious or entertaining. So check it out for yourself. It released on July 11th, and go ahead and read my written review on the website.